The Eagles finished their rookie camp over the weekend. I'm Zach Berman. This is Fran Duffy. I was at that rookie camp, finally got to see the players on grass. Fran had been studying these players for months. So we're going to play a quick game where I'm going to tell you what I learned, and Fran's going to tell me if there's anything to read to it or if this is just a May storyline that we'll soon forget months later. The first is that Jihaad Campbell was not practicing. What do you make of that?
Yeah, to be expected. I think when you're talking about someone who had shoulder surgery right after the combine, that you're not expecting to see him out on the field. The fact that he was out there, a good sign. I guess the bigger thing is which position group was he standing near? Which coach was he interacting with most? I'm taking more away from that as opposed to him on the field or not.
Yeah. So is this the type of thing too, where if he's not practicing in training camp, you're concerned? Howie Roseman brought up in radio interviews last week on WIP and elsewhere the Cooper DeJean timeline. Now, the difference is Cooper DeJean was injured in July when he was preparing for training camp, but his point was that people might have been concerned about DeJean in July and August. He catches a pick six in the Super Bowl. He had an incredibly productive year, core player for the team. No one cared that he missed, a part of July. At what point would you say these concerns that teams had are founded, and at what point are you like, this is kind of baked into the price and you should just expect to see him maybe August toward the season?
Yeah, I think that honestly, anything that's going to be long term, we're talking like year 3, year 4, year 5. That's the stuff that causes a player to drop. I don't think that he was dropped down boards completely or off boards completely was because he might not be ready to play until September 28th, right? I think this is more a thing of teams were worried, hey, you know what? He already has shoulder surgery on one. He might need an issue. He might have another issue with another shoulder. He had a knee earlier on in his career. Like, is this something that we're going to be worried about long-term with him? I think that's the thing that would concern you more so than, what is his availability going to be like by the time we get to the third preseason game, right? And I think, honestly, like when you are drafting, and I know Howie Roseman has said this in the past, like you are not trying to field your team for week 1, right? And it was there was no urgency with Cooper DeJean last year of, all right, we're gonna get him on the field. We got to get him ready to play in the slot for week 1. No, you're worried about, all right, let's get him up to speed, right? Vic Fangio's not going to press it. He's not going to rush it. So I would imagine they're going to take the same approach here with Jihaad Campbell.
The second thing that jumped out to me, so I was curious, are they going to move Cameron Williams to guard? Right, Cameron Williams is a tackle who projects as a potential guard. The Eagles took Myles Hinton and Cameron Williams. Cameron Williams was playing right tackle. Now, it's important to note in rookie camp, you don't have your full roster there. You're just kind of fielding the line based on the group of players you have. Is there anything to be read into this? And what do you think Cameron Williams' position is going to be come July and August?
Yeah, I think that honestly, it's definitely more geared towards how do you get this guy to be able to hit full stride and get comfortable as fast as possible. He needs a lot of work. Cameron Williams only started one season at college at Texas. It was only at right tackle. So my guess is, hey, if we're going to try and get him up to speed from a verbiage standpoint and understanding all of our different schemes and also like basic footwork and hand placement, we want to make sure that he's doing it in an area where he's most comfortable. Let's start him at right tackle. And if we think that he can compete at guard, like maybe we'll toy with that as we get into the summer. But right now, let's just kind of let him ease into the position, into life in the NFL.
Some other quick offensive line notes just from getting a chance to speak to these players. Drew Kendall raved about Jason Kelce, as you would imagine, but it wasn't in the pandering sense. Like, when an Eagles safety gets drafted and they're like, mention Brian Dawkins. He said that Jason Kelce is the most influential center of his lifetime, and he's someone that he kind of studied when watching how to play center. So that stood out. Myles Hinton, interestingly, his father, a longtime Pro Bowl player, but that wasn't like the basis of their relationship was football. A matter of fact, Myles Hinton didn't know how good his father was until we went back and watched it. Myles Hinton, interesting guy, very, he wants to pursue a career in marine biology after the NFL. It was interesting speaking to him about that. He's interested in fish. He's interested in biology, so he put that together for marine biology. The third thing I wanted to bring up is the Eagles only had one quarterback in rookie camp.
Right.
And that was Kyle McCord. Typically, you have tryout quarterbacks. Yep. They did not have that in this camp. So A, were you surprised that Kyle McCord was the only quarterback in the camp? And then I have a second part of the question after that.
Yeah, I guess it's a little surprising. I guess at the end of the day, too, like there weren't a ton of. They didn't draft any receivers,
Sure.
Obviously. They didn't draft any tight ends. And so it's not like they had a wealth of pass catchers that you had to worry about. Now, the Eagles brought in a couple of undrafted free agents at the position, and then a number of tryout players. Giles Jackson ended up earning a roster spot over the course of the rookie minicamp. But not all that surprising that it would just be one quarterback. But I would say that is abnormal.
So because he was the only quarterback, he had a lot of attention from Scott Loeffler, the Eagles' new quarterbacks coach. And the reason I bring this up is Kyle McCord said Scott Loeffler actually offered him a scholarship when he was in when he just finished 8th grade. Scott Loeffler at the time was at Boston College and pursued Kyle McCord then. Actually, Kyle McCord's high school coach at St. Joe's Prep didn't tell him until the end of his freshman year because McCord wasn't the starter at the time, and he did not want McCord to get a big head about this scholarship offer before high school. But this was interesting, too, because the two have kept in close contact. A matter of fact, when Kyle McCord was at Syracuse and Scott Loeffler was the head coach at Bowling Green, McCord said they spoke a few times during the season, which is not something you typically hear from a college starting quarterback and a coach from a different team, someone who recruited him 5 years earlier.
May or may not be a violation. I had to look that up with the NCAA rules.
So as you hear this, do you think that the quarterback coach has influence in the pick? Do you think this is more coincidence? And I guess what sense do you have of how Scott Loeffler is going to be coaching the quarterbacks for the Eagles?
Yeah, I think that, anytime you have a relationship like that, it certainly can help. We know that this is a people business, right? And so it's going to come down to, especially at backup quarterback, you want to have a level of comfort with the person and understanding of the work ethic and how they're going to be able to help the quarterback room overall. You want guys with upside that have starting upside. The Eagles don't take players on day 3 of the draft unless you have that upside, but you also want to feel good about the floor and having a better understanding of, hey, does this guy have the character to be able to reach that ceiling that we've got for him in the evaluation process? So certainly Coach Loeffler, his relationship with Kyle McCord, I think probably did play somewhat of a factor there. Is it going to be a deciding factor? I don't think so, but I think it's enough where, again, I think with coaches, more often than not, when they're talking with teams, it's green light, yellow light, red light, rather that kind of idea of like, do you want to work with this guy? Do you like this guy? Or is it like, yeah, I can work with him, or like, I would not like to work with this player, right? And so I think with Scott Loeffler and Kyle McCord, clearly it was a green light situation.
The Eagles put out outstanding footage, their unscripted series behind the scenes in the draft, and I understand that some of that could be edited in that there's conversations that don't make it. But I bring this up because there was a lot of conversation draft weekend about were the Eagles interested in Jiair Sanders and like, was Kyle McCord a fallback option? I don't know all the conversations that occurred in that room, but I do know from seeing that video and from talking to different people that you saw the interest in Kyle McCord actually it preceded the beginning of day 3 in that Dave Caldwell specifically shouted out Kyle McCord as a quarterback who was still available, talked about different, and I say Dave Caldwell, former Jaguars GM, who's now in the Eagles front office. Zap Drapkin, who's part of the Eagles analytics staff, he's giving like the data behind why Kyle McCord stands out, the accuracy numbers, the completion percentage. So is it your understanding that Kyle McCord is someone that I shouldn't say targeted, but is a quarterback the Eagles really liked going into day 3?
Yeah, clearly someone that they felt passionate about. There were certain individuals in that room that were able to voice their opinion on him. And you mentioned Dave Caldwell, and I'm sure that the Eagles area scouts in that area felt strongly about him as well. Certainly, we talked about the relationship with Scott Loeffler, and so if you have enough champions in the room, that's going to make sure that you're going to be high enough up on the board that you're going to be selected. I don't know that the Eagles were necessarily going to be in on Jiair Sanders. I know we talked about that the day of day 3 of the draft, that being a possibility. But clearly, when you look at Kyle McCord, this is a player that they had their eye on.
For all of Fran Duffy's work, make sure you're a diehard. He has a too early 2026 mock draft coming out. It's never too early for me, though. I'm already looking at those names. That's on allphly.com. That's Fran Duffy. I'm Zach Berman. You're watching the PHLY Eagles Show. We're on at 2 p.m. every day.